Alright, so I thought I'd just catch up on my last video about turning into a skeleton. And I've somehow become more of a skeleton over this past month. So I've lost 2 kilograms since I weighed in that last time and then this morning. So I was at around 71.6 and then this morning I weighed in at 69.3. So 2.2 kilograms lost there, which is not ideal since I was looking to put on a bit of weight, get some muscle back. But I'll just go through what I've been up to in terms of fitness and then hopefully we can see why that happened. So like I said, I've recently got back into running. I took a couple years off of this, being consistent in it. And especially in the last year because I was doing these cycling challenges and I didn't want to get injured for them. But now that I'm back, you know, I'm kind of wanting to mix up the routine a bit, and I've been on 10 runs and I haven't been injured, which is amazing. So I think it's worth doing a separate video on this because, you know, running is one of the most common forms of cardio, and I think a lot of people get injured similar to me when going back into it. But just quickly glancing over the stuff that I do, so it's going slow, short strides, you know, increasing rest days, not running too often, and then also just not running too far. You know, if you're going back for your first run in months, in years, literally just run to the end of the street 50 meters and back the first day, leave it at that and see how you feel the next day. You'll probably find like your calves are sore, your hips are probably sore. Take a couple days off and then go back, run a bit further this time. So maybe run there and back and do it again. Or, you know, run around the corner and that kind of stuff. And then once you're feeling a bit comfortable, you know, you don't really have any aches. You know, there's a difference between good aches, you know, muscle soreness, a bit of tightness, and then the bad stuff, you know, when you get kind of like shin splints, shooting pains in the joints. I'll touch on that topic in a different video because there's a lot to go into. So next, moving on to the gym. So in that past year, I really didn't do much gym at all. You know, being on the bike, on the road, it's quite difficult. Since I've been back, like I said, I started in the home gym setup that I've got here, which is mainly just body weight. So I can do pull-ups, push-ups, squats, and I have a bench where I can use 12.5 kilogram dumbbells. That's good to get some conditioning back. So just doing the movements under some tension, just so my body gets used to it again before moving back into the gym and actually lifting kind of heavier and progressively overloading myself to get back to the strength I was at. So I've been back in the gym probably a couple weeks now, and I go 3 to 4 times a week, and I pretty much just do full body each time I go. I do some calisthenics as soon as I get in, and I do some stretching. At 28, you know, I'm extremely stiff and tight, and I really need to warm up and stretch before getting into an exercise. So yeah, I'm slowly building that up. I'm not tracking my lifts because, you know, I'm nowhere near what I used to be. It's something I should be doing though, but I'm not really that deep into it. I'm just kind of like going and feeling the weight each time and just going for it. There's kind of a joke in the gym space where it's just like you train to mild discomfort, and that is definitely me at the moment. I mean, I do go to failure sometimes on these exercises, but I'm definitely not in the mindset to be, you know, pushing myself to failure every set because I'm still very conscious of injury since my body's still not fully adjusted to it yet. So in the coming months, you know, that'll be the case. I'll, you know, start pushing a bit further and hopefully getting back to the strength that I was at before. You know, I kind of gauged that by the chest press, you know, with the dumbbells. I was doing 36 kilograms in each arm at most, and now I'm on around 26 for a set of 8. So that is kind of my gauge there, and we'll see where I get to with that. So next, looking at swimming. I used to do a lot of swimming when I was younger. You know, growing up in Thailand, had access to a lot of pools and a lot of warm weather, so it was just very easy to get into it. I did do quite a bit of swimming when I was at school here and then also at university, but I've kind of dropped down now and I just do casual stuff, but I have not been back in the pool since I've been back from Scotland. So I'm looking to change that because it is a great form of cardio and rehabilitation cardio as well. You know, it's very light on the joints. It's probably one of the most difficult, I'd say, or the most uncomfortable to get into, because if you haven't learned how to swim, that's your first barrier. And then second off, to get to the pool, you know, get changed, you know, even if it's in the winter in the UK, it's even harder. But then this moves on to my next form of cardio, which is skipping, which is probably the easiest to jump into actually, literally. So I used to do quite a bit of jump rope when I was younger, and I did a lot of it when I would do Muay Thai as well. You know, it's a great way to warm up, and it's a great way to condition your legs and strengthen the joints, and also, you know, the shin and everything like that, putting it under constant impact. And it makes you very light on your feet. You know, if you have the muscles and the stability to be able to jump around quite a lot, it's very good for those martial arts. I haven't been skipping in similar to running like over a year. And I bought a skipping rope, £7 the other day from Amazon, and I did around 5-10 minutes. And the next day, my calves were just the tightest thing ever. Skipping is something I'm going to be doing a lot more of. You know, it's a good way to get outside and also just to have a kind of like light impact on your legs. It's better than running in that sense because you're not jumping very high and you're not in motion. With running, you know, you're moving and you're landing on one foot each time, and that's putting a lot of impact on your legs. And then moving on to cycling lastly, and a bit of a confession, I haven't been back on the bike since finishing Scotland, and it's just because, you know, I wanted to get back into some of the other sports I was doing, and the bike is in the basement needing a clean, so I need to do that at some point, potentially today because it's nice weather outside. So that's the fitness portion of things. Now getting on to probably the most important, which is the diet. So this might be the key to why I've lost 2 kilograms. Like I said, you know, I've been eating a lot more clean since I've been off the bike. You know, it's a lot easier when you have your own kitchen. You can just go shopping and buy the things you want. And I'd argue everyone should do this at least once, you know, tracking your calories. It's so easy with an app like MyFitnessPal. And it's just kind of good to understand what you're eating, just in case you're putting all the effort in to the activities you're doing, the gym, running, cycling, whatever, and you're not seeing the progress you want just because you're not getting the nutrients you need or the macros. So I did a day of tracking and going through that now. So in the morning I'd have 4 eggs and a slice of toast. I'd have butter on the toast and I'd use olive oil to cook the eggs, and that comes out to 772 calories. I'll get into the macros at the very end just as like a bulk kind of a figure. And I typically have a big breakfast here. I'd have the eggs and the toast, and I'd also have a big bowl of Greek yogurt, strawberry yogurt, and then oats in there with a bit of peanut butter. And that bowl in total comes to, you know, 690 calories, including the milk and everything. So it's a pretty big breakfast, and I've stopped doing that recently just because it just makes me feel very sluggish to have so much food in such a short period of time. So it's just not a good thing to do sometimes. I'd have a coffee with some soy milk and then a banana as well. And that would be just 128 calories in there. And then moving on to lunch, you know, I have very basic meals. This might make some people cringe, but lunch is typically just a wrap with some avocado on there and then some kind of meat in there, this time tuna. You know, a bit of salt. Sometimes I put some cucumber in or whatever, but this was just kind of like the most basic day. You know, it's easy when you don't really have to prepare that much stuff and you can just, you know, slap it there. It's that kind of mindset that people have of like, oh, I'm gonna have to do so much preparation to make food myself, and they just kind of put you off. Whereas if you just make the most basic meals, it's just very easy. But you kind of have to condition yourself to enjoy that. Or there's a few extra steps you can take just to make it taste nice, which I didn't bother doing this time. But that wrap there was 418 calories. And then moving on to the final meal of the day, cooked by my mum. You know, mum's cooking pretty much gets you wherever you need to be. You know, it's got all the nutrients in there. But this meal here, so it was just turkey breast and then some vegetables, you know, potatoes, broccoli, carrot. And that was only 261 calories. You know, it's very small amount. Didn't expect it to be that low. But all of that in total was 2,269 calories. And my goal for the day is 2,250. So, you know, I'm not too far from the calorie goal there. I'm just a tiny bit over. And with the exercise I do, I'm definitely in a deficit. But the problem here is breaking down the macros now. So looking at the protein, I was only at 107 grams of protein in that day when I should be around the 160 mark. You know, people typically say to do 1 gram of protein per gram of body weight. And it is a good marker generally. You know, it's not totally necessary, but I'd say I'm definitely on the low side of things. And if I'm looking to grow kind of like the muscles back and get the strength back in the gym, I really need the protein to be up there. So that is kind of why it's important to track at least a couple times so you can understand what your meals contain, and then you can kind of just eyeball it most of the time. So moving forward, you know, obviously I need some extra stuff in there. Probably I can have a protein shake, which is low in calories, high in protein. But it's best to get it naturally. I could just add maybe some more chicken in there, to be honest. You know, bulk cook a kilogram of chicken like I used to, and then just, you know, have that in a wrap or just by itself. Yeah, so that's how it's going, and I will do some further videos on the topics I discussed as well, just to kind of break those down. But yeah, see you guys in the next video. Ciao!